on Daf Tzadik Beis Amid Beis at the Mishnah, about 10 lines from the bottom. So we're going to enter a new sugya, the sugya of Shnaim She'asuha, the concept of with two people do the malacha together, and there are three possible combinations here where neither of them could do it alone, and they really need each other in order to be able to do the malacha. For instance, they're carrying a heavy item, a couch, and the only way for them to carry that is where they can't do it alone, and they need each other, and they're carrying it out from a private domain to a public domain, or vice versa. The opposite is where they're carrying something that really each one can do easily on their own, and they decide to do it together, where each one could have done it alone, but they did it in an abnormal way, and they did it in a way that it doesn't really attribute the action to each one. That's the other option. The third way is where one of them can do it alone and the other can't. So it's one is stronger than the other, and they can do it alone, but the other helps out, and the other could not do it alone. So those are three options that Gemara are going to give us, and I'm giving you an example of where one cannot do it alone versus in a case where really they can do it alone, but they're only using one hand, and with one hand they can't do it alone. So that's circumstantially they can't do it alone versus where they actually can't do it alone. And that's not in the Gemara itself, that discussion, and that's in the Mefarshim, in the commentaries.
The other option is they're on the union.
Yes. Yeah, if you work for government jobs. All right, Mishnah. Hamaitzi kikar l'rishus harabim chayim. Somebody carries a loaf of bread or a log, carries something into public domain, is going to be chayiv. But if two people carry it together, they're going to be exempt. As we said, the idea is that the action doesn't go back to the person who did it. It doesn't count as his, and it's an abnormal way. Rashi says it's an abnormal way of doing it. If one of them cannot take it on his own, and they took it together, they are obligated, meaning in a sin offering. That means that they transgressed. Rabbi Shimon poiter. Rabbi Shimon says, no, you're exempt. So we'll see in the Gemara the explanation and the three cases. Either Rav Yehuda said it in the name of Rav, Abaye said it, or it's a brisa. If each one could really do it on their own, but they did it together, then Rabbi Meir Mechayev, Rabbi Meir says it still counts as your action. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, but both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon say, no, in such a case you're exempt and it doesn't count as your action because you could have done it alone and you did it together with someone else. So it's an abnormal way of doing it, and it's also not your action because the other guy could have done it on his own. However, if neither of them could do it alone, so it's a couch, they cannot carry it out alone, and they carry it out. Each one couldn't do it alone, but together they can do it. So Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir, Mechayben. In that case, Rabbi Yehuda joins Rabbi Meir's opinion and says, no, then you're obligated because it counts as your action, and it's the normal way of doing it. And you can't say the other one could have done it alone, and you could have done it alone, and therefore it's your action. Rabbi Shimon poiter, but still Rabbi Shimon says that you're exempt in such a case. However, if one of them is able to do it and the other is not, then everybody agrees that he's obligated in a sin offering and it counts as his action. But who is he? The Gemara is going to ask later. Tanya Namiyachar of a brisa like this. Somebody carries a loaf out into a public domain. He carries. He's chayiv. If two carry them, so Rabbi Meir says he's obligated a sin offering. He's transgressed. Rabbi Yehuda says if one can't do it alone and they did it together, then it's going to be chayiv. Vimlav paturim, but if not, he's going to be exempt. Meaning, if they could do it alone, it'll be exempt. Rabbi Shimon says, in any case, you're exempt. And minani mili. So now the Gemara is going to say, how do we know? What's the basis for this concept? The Gemara is going to bring a verse, a pasuk, when in the obligation of a chatas offering, when somebody transgressed a sin, there's a chatas offering. If the sin is something that has a kares, so there's a chatas, as we've seen. And if they did so inadvertently, so they didn't know it was Shabbos, or if they forgot that you can't carry on Shabbos, and they brought this out in public domain, they're bringing a sin offering, as the Torah says over there. If somebody did one of the prohibitions that the Torah says not to do, and they transgressed, and the Torah says in the pasuk, ba'asosa, if somebody sinned inadvertently, and he did ba'asosa when he did it, one of the mitzvahs that Hashem said not to do. Ha'osas kulav, it says mitzvah. So since it says ba'asosa, when he would do it, it has to be that he did the entire thing, and not that two people did it together. Not that he did part. Ketzad. What scenario? Two people holding on a pitchfork. And they're pitchforking, right? That's literally what this means. He said they're flipping hay or whatever it is. Bekarkar v'shovting. So we've seen the karkar before is a tool used in weaving, in setting up the loom, and you need to have the threads, the vertical threads, stretched tight so that they can be lifted up and make a tight weave, and they have to be neat. And so the karkar is either this pick that will separate the threads if they're getting intertwined, or it's a rod that was used to hit the threads that were a little bit too tight so that they are equally tight, and sort of to stretch them a little bit. Bekulmus, if two people carry a quill, and they write, bekane, or a rod together, and they take it out to Shusarabim. All these things are possible to be done alone, and they did them together. So perhaps they're both going to be obligated. Therefore, it says when he will do her. Now it says kula, it says miktasa, when he does the entire thing and not when he does part. So the drash from the word ba'asosa, by doing it has to be that you did the entire thing. Tzadik Gimel and Aleph now, and 93a. Be'igul shel devela v'yitziyol rishus harabim. Something that's heavy, like a fig wheel. Like we know cheese is made in wheels, so figs were pressed into wheels and then they would cut into slices. Or or a press beam, also very heavy. So both of those really a person cannot carry on their own. And they're typically done with two people. So Rabbi Yehuda says, if one person cannot take it out alone and two people were needed, and indeed two people did it, so then they're going to be obligated in the sin offering. They transgress. If not, they're going to be exempt of the sin offering. Meaning, if they could take it out alone. And Rabbi Shimon says, no, they're both going to be exempt, even if neither of them can take it out. And he says that's the extent of asosa. One person does it alone, he's chayiv, and only and if two people did it, he will not be obligated. He's only obligated in a sin offering. It's only his transgression if he did it alone. So what's the basis? They're both looking at the same word. So what's the basis of this? V'aikra. In this verse itself, the pasuk begins that verse with saying, "Nefesh achas techate b'shgaga me'am haaretz ba'asosa." If one soul will sin inadvertently, one of the people of the land, to do one of the mitzvahs that should not be done. So the drash's nefesh itself means one. Im nefesh achas. So Reb Shimon Savat Lasim Miyuti. Reb Shimon says there are three miyuts. A miyut is where the verse indicates, the pasuk indicates a limit. So there are three miyutim. Nefesh, techata. So he puts the word techata, sin, onto three of the words. If a soul, a person, shall sin, and then it says achas, a single, right? That's superfluous. It should have just said v'im nefesh ki sechata or nefesh sechata. If it's a person will sin or a soul will sin, why does it say a soul, a single, nefesh achas techata? So that achas techata is another one. Ba'asosa is also superfluous. It should have, when he will do it. That's again, he will do it. Chad lemiute oiker, and therefore one of them tells us when one is to tell you when they do, each one does half of the work. So we know, we've seen many times, to transgress carrying, you have to uproot something, pick it up from where it is, carry it across the line or 6 feet about, which is Dalet Amos, and put it down. But in the case where one lifted up and the other person put it down, which is the first case in the Masechta, in the first Mishnah of Shabbos, where the homeowner sticks something out and the poor man took it out of his hands and put it down. So there, each one did half. So that's the exemption, because it says one person will do it, and not if each one does it alone. And not it has to do it alone, and not if each does half of it. And one is to tell you where they both did the entire thing, but they did it together. They're holding on to the pitchfork together. They're holding on to the quill and writing together, where each one could do it alone. And one is to tell you where neither of them can do it alone. And yet, it doesn't count as an individual act. Rabbi Yehuda says one is to tell you where they each did half of the work, meaning one lifted it up and one put it down. And one is to tell you where both of them are able to do it, and yet they did it together. So there's an exemption, because that's an abnormal way of doing it, and neither of them can say that the work attributes to them, because it can attribute to the other, because the other could have done it alone, and they didn't have to do it. And he says the third case is to tell you a different exemption, where somebody did it not on account of their own mistake, but on account of a mistaken ruling from the Beis Din. So the Beis Din was asked by this individual, can I carry this in a public domain, or does this count as a public domain? And the Beis Din ruled that he was allowed to carry it, and then realized its mistake and retracted that, and he's already sinned. He's already done it. So in that case as well, he's going to be exempt, as we have in the Gemara in Horias, that this is going to be an exemption on account of it's not his action, it's not his mistake, it's the mistake of Beis Din. But Rabbi Shimon doesn't follow that, because as we saw over there in Horias, Rabbi Shimon is of the opinion. Rabbi Shimon says he does bring a sin offering in such a case, even though that it wasn't his mistake. It was a mistake that he followed the Beis Din, and it was a mistake of the Beis Din. Nevertheless, he brings a sin offering. Rabbi Meir, why doesn't Rabbi Meir say any of this? So Rabbi Meir miksiv nefesh techata, achas techata, basesa techata. It doesn't say techata 3 times that he would do a sin. It says one person does a sin. Terei miuti ksivi. It only says two limits. Chad miuti ze oikev ze maniach, and therefore it's only one is where you've only done half the actual work, So each one did it individually, but they each did only half. There, Rabbi Meir agrees that you're exempt. You have to do the entire thing. But if you did the entire thing, even if you did it with someone else, and you could have done it alone, he says you're chayev. And the other is based in. And the second exemption is, or the superfluous word, the extra word, which he's saying that is an individual. That's where it's his mistake, as opposed to if it's the Beis Din's mistake, that would be exempt as well. Jules, can you hear us? Jules?
Unmute. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, fine.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. I saw you had trouble getting on, so I was just checking.
No, I had to. Thank you.
Okay. Cigar 93, Tzadi Gimel Amid Aleph, midway down the page. Amar Mar. So the Brisa had said, and we're going to analyze the Brisa now. If one is able to do it alone and one is not able to do it alone, that everybody would agree that he's obligated to bring the sin offering. It counts as his action. Which one are we talking about? It's the one that's able to do it on his own because he did the entire work. He could have done it on his own anyhow, and he didn't need the other person. And in fact, the other person couldn't do it on his own. So the entire work, the entire action, it counts as his. But the one that could not do it on his own, Micah Ovid, what did he do? The one who could not do it on his own, it's not his action because he couldn't do it on his own, so he didn't do it alone. And the other person could have done it on their own, and they in fact did the work. So his assistance was of no significance. So Micah Ovid, what did he do? So Ramnuna said, what do you mean, what did he do? When he helped out. True, the other person could have done it alone, but he helped out and he did it. So that's why it should count it as his work. This is a help that is of no significance, and it has no no meaning. The other person could do it alone. It's an assistance that has no assistance, and therefore it's nothing. Rabbi Tzvi said, in fact, we have a brisa like that. And the next few cases that we're going to have are in reference to tuma of hesed, tuma of sitting on something or leaning or sleeping on something, and the tuma of the zav on it. And so we've seen before that if a zav sleeps on a bed, the mattress and the bed frame, anything that's beneath him is going to be tummy. So he's sitting on a bed. Va'arba talios tachas ragli amita, and beneath each one of the legs of the bed, there's a cloth, a garment, something to either support it or make sure it doesn't scratch the floor or whatever it may be. Tameos, so they are all going to be tamei because again, there's the pressure of the person sitting, the zav sitting on the bed, which the mattress and the frame and the legs and the garments beneath the bed are all going to become tamei. And the Brisa explains the reason is because all four legs are needed. And since all four legs are needed in order to support this bed, each one of them is a support to the zav, and the garment beneath it is support to the zav. But Rabbi Shimon says that no, that in this case it is tar, because each one alone is not the support. Each garment alone could not support the zav, and so it's not its own. The mattress is entire, and it's one item that's supporting the zav. Each leg, however, the cloth under each leg, each one alone couldn't do it. It can only do it in combination of the four. So none of them are actually supporting the zav alone. And Rabbi Shimon says that even when multiple people doing it together, in this case cloths doing it together, or each one alone couldn't do it, they also don't combine. Similarly, somebody is riding on an animal, and there are 4 claws, one under each of the legs of the animal. Taharas, they are all going to be tahar. They're going to be, they're not going to be tamei on the pressure because they don't support the zav. Because the animal itself can stand without the cloth. It can stand on 3 legs. So each one of them, you could say, look, it didn't need, its support was not needed. And what it says, Vamai, how come but even though that it's not needed, but it does support each other. Because since it can do, the other 3 can do it without this one, so this one, even though it is supporting and helping, but it's not necessary, and this type of support is of no significance. Amar Rabbi Yehuda made Diskarta. So Rabbi Yehuda said of Diskarta, that's a place, said, I could really argue to you and say that a support, even a help, even though that it's not necessary, it is of significance, and therefore it should count as a supportive role, even though it's possible to do without it. But by the leg of an animal, it's different because the animal can lift its leg off the ground entirely, and it doesn't need the support. It's not that it's supporting it, but it's not necessary. It actually can lift its leg up entirely and not even be there. And therefore, and since sometimes it lifts this leg and sometimes this leg, so any leg by itself it could be lifted on its own and not support, and therefore, and therefore it's going to be like a zav who is turning over and is not being supported by one thing by itself. What's that case? Milo Tanan, didn't we learn? Zav shu mutal al hey safsalon al hey pundos la'orkan tamein l'rachvan tahar. A zav is lying on several benches that are placed next to each other, and if he's lying to the length of the meaning parallel to the length of the benches, he's laying on the length of the benches, so they're tamei because he's really at any point on one bench alone. However, l'rachban, if he is laying on its side, meaning perpendicular to the angle of the bed itself, and then it's going to be tahor. Then it's going to, it doesn't count as they are receiving his pressure, because each one of the benches, if you slipped one away, he really is never putting his weight on that one, because if you slipped one away, he still have support on the 4 other benches that are there. Yashin, however, if he's sleeping, Safik mishapech alein, maybe he's changing, he's turning between one and the other. Tamein, they're going to be tamei. So there too over here, if it's tamei over there, because maybe he's switching from one to the next, so too over here. Even though that each one of the legs can be lifted up and not supported, but since it switches from one to the next, and each one is giving support at some point, like the benches where the zav is sleeping and it turns from one to the next, and so we say that while he's putting pressure on any given one, that's the one that's supporting him, and it becomes tamei. So to over here, true that the animal has 4 legs and can lift one up, and the other 3 would support him, but indeed, when the animal lifts one leg, the other 3 are supporting it, and it becomes tamei. And then when he switches the legs, that one becomes tamei because it continues to change, just like the zav rolling over in the middle of the night. Rather, the reason over there that by the animal's legs and by the legs of the bed, where we say that the cloths that are beneath each one of the legs are not susceptible, are not going to be receiving tumah of the zav by pressure, it's because they're not really by themselves supporting anything, because individually they're not necessary. And even though that it's doing something, it's helping, but it's a help that's of no significance because it doesn't really, it's not necessary help, and therefore it doesn't count as doing an action. Amar Rav Papi Mishmei Rav Afanan Nami Tanina. And so Rav Papi says that indeed we have a brisa to support this. And we're now inside the Gimel Amid base. Rabbi Yossi Omer. Rabbi Yossi says, Hasus Matame al Yodov Hachamor al Raglov. The horse is going to be Matame if a Zav is riding the horse, and there's a cloth in the front the forearms, the front legs of the horse, or by a donkey on its hind legs. The Gra says that the text it's the other way around. Horses put much of their weight on their hind legs, and donkeys put on the front legs. In either case, the idea is that different animals put more weight on either the front half of their body or the back half of their body, and therefore the cloths that are beneath the front legs for the horse in our text, the cloth that's beneath the hind legs for the donkey in the text that we have. They're going to be tummy. Why? Because the horse supports itself on the front legs and the donkey on the back legs. So why do we say only those are tummy? They're helping each other, even though it's not necessary, but it does help each other. So why are only the two the claws between beneath the hind legs tummy in the case where that's the support of the animal, even though that the front legs also support, and therefore the claws underneath them should be tummy. So we see this idea that even though it does support and it does help, when the help is of no significance, that doesn't count as help because it can be done alone. Meaning it doesn't mean that the help is not actually helping. It does help. It makes it easier, but it can be done alone without it, and that's the main support, and therefore the other help is of no consequence. Amar Rav Ashi Afanana Mitanina. Rav Ashi says we have another brisa to support this. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Raglei achas ala kli, raglei achas ala ritzpa. This is in the work done in the Beis Hamikdash, and we're talking about a kohen that's doing his avoda. He's doing the service in the Beis Hamikdash, and he's standing with one leg on a vessel or something that's a barrier between the floor of the Beis Hamikdash and his leg. And the halacha is that if the kohen is wearing anything between his foot and the floor, or not only if he's wearing it, but if there's anything there, that it's going to be an invalid avodah. As the Torah says, ha'omdim, they have to stand there in the Beis Hamikdash after they stand there directly together with their brothers, directly on the ground. Matana, but he's got one leg that's on a vessel, so he stepped on a vessel by mistake while doing the avodah, and the other leg is on the floor. One is on a stone that's there instead of the floor. Right. So we have to analyze this. If he's supporting himself well enough, that if you had removed the vessel or that he's stepping on, or with one leg, or he's stepping, or the rock that he's stepping on, and he can support himself while standing on the other, so that's considered that he's standing on the floor of the Beis Hamikdash, because he can stand even without that item there. But if you had removed that item he's stepping on with one leg, and then he would not be able to stand alone. So if that is a basis for his support and standing, that means that he's standing not on the floor of the Beis Hamikdash, but rather on that item. So psula, his work will be invalid.
It's not a matter of chatzitza then? I always thought it was a matter of chatzitza.
It is a matter of chatzitza. It's a barrier between his leg and the floor. However,
It sounds like it's not talui in chatzitza. It's not talui in whether he could stand up or not.
right, because if he's standing on one leg and the other leg's in the air, that would count as a good avodah. It'll count that he's standing on the floor and there's no barrier. And therefore the same here. If he's stepping on one leg is on the floor and the other leg is on something else. But if you remove that other thing, he'd still be able to support himself and stand on one leg on the floor. So
What's that got to do with
so it's of no significance. It's supporting him, but it's not really helping him because he could do it with the other leg alone. So therefore, it doesn't count as a barrier. Let me just say the point.
He could put his foot on a sandal, and we had the same thing. He could stand without a sandal.
No, let me make the point. One second. When he's standing one leg on a pot, one leg on a rock, and the other leg is on the floor of the Beis Hamikdash, and if you remove that rock or pot, he'd still be able to stand one-legged on the floor of the Beis Hamikdash. So then the leg, if the leg that is standing on something else is not really supporting him, so then he's not standing on something else. He's standing directly on the floor, and the other leg happens to be he's holding it up in the air. And if he's standing on one leg in the air, then he's doing the work in the Beis Hamikdash while standing on the floor of the Beis Hamikdash. What we see is that the fact that he can stand on one leg is enough to say that that's his main support. And if that's his main support, the other leg is of no significance, or what's beneath the other leg is of no significance.
Are they standing barefooted?
Yes. Michael, does that answer your question?
Well, I mean, what Jules just asked, they're not allowed to wear shoes. They have to be barefooted.
Correct. They have to be directly on the floor.
If he went in with one shoe on and one shoe off, he'd be good to go.
Only if he can support himself with his one leg that doesn't have a shoe on.
Well, you're saying, I mean, it's a given that he could stand one-legged.
No, if he can. That's if he can stand. Right. We have to analyze. If at every moment he's able to stand with one leg, that would be fine. So, but you have to realize that if he's moving, he's not able to move on one leg. Right, he'd have to put the other leg down, and then it would be invalid.
Uh-huh.
But as long as he's able to stand on that one leg, and that's what Ryan is, we analyze and see, can he stand on one leg while the other leg has that barrier there? So then the barrier is of no significance because that leg is of no significance. He's not even supporting himself on that leg, even though he is to some degree, but it's Messiah Hashem B'mamish. It's assistance that's not necessary and therefore doesn't count. The Gemara asks this point, doesn't it support it? Again, we see this idea that if the support it's giving is of is not necessary, then it doesn't have a halachic significance in its support. Amar Ravina Ravina says we also have another brisa like this. The halacha is that all work in the Beis Hamikdash has to be done with the right hand. And this person is holding the bucket to receive the blood or whatever avodah he's doing in the Beis Hamikdash, which he has to do with his right hand, and his left hand is assisting him, but he's doing it with the right hand. So it's going to be kosher. Why is it kosher? But since both of them the left hand is assisting the right hand, it should count as they're both doing it and therefore invalid. They're helping. Must be that a help that is of no necessity is of no significance. When again, this idea that even though it does help, but it can be done without it, then that help is of no significance and doesn't invalidate the work. It doesn't invalidate the standing, and it's not a transgression in Shabbos Shemami. Amar Ma. Back to the brisa in regards to two people doing work together. When two people, each one of them could do it alone, yet they did it together. So Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda say exempt each one because neither of them can, it's an abnormal way, Rashi says, of doing it, and neither of them can be held accountable as their action because they were not necessary in the work. However, Rabbi Meir says he's chayiv, he has to bring a sin offering. Iboyelu, bi'inan shir lezeh v'shir lezeh, oidil mashir echad lekula. Do we need the requisite amount for each one? Because each one's going to have to bring a sin offering, according to Rabbi Meir. Do I need, so they're carrying out a fig together. Now, a fig is the minimum size of food to carry, and but they carried it together. So each one of them only has a half a fig? Or do we say, no, each one carried a fig together? Rav Chisda Rav Hamnuna Chadam Ashir Lozeh V'Shir Lozeh. So Rav Chisda and Rav Hamnuna disagreed. One said that you need an entire fig size for each one of them. And one says, no, since it's one action, and the one action counts for both of them because each one is doing the entirety of it together with the other, but each one's doing the entirety of it. So the entire shear, the entire measure of what they took out counts for both.
What if they carried out two figs together?
Sorry?
What if they carried out two figs together?
That everybody agrees that it would count as an individual act for each. Not everybody. Everybody agrees that Rabbi Meir would hold that it counts for each, meaning that there you have a requisite amount for each. The question is if it's one fig, where if I'm dividing it as saying each one did work, so perhaps I divide the fig and each one only carried half and therefore it doesn't count. And that's one version. And the other version, Rav Hamnuna, the Rav Chisda, and the other says actually the full amount carried counts for each one individually. So we have a brisa that supports this. There's brisa we learned before about the zav, that he's sitting on the bed, and beneath each one of the four legs of the bed, there's a garment, a cloth. Tameos, they are susceptible to tumah. Each one becomes tameh from the zav sitting there. Because it cannot stand on three legs. It needs the four legs. And therefore, each one is supporting it. Why don't we say, well, I need the zav to be tameh individually for each one of the items. And so I'd have to have a measure of zav for each one. So whether it's the amount of tumah he has, or as Rashi says, he would have to put most of his weight on each one of the legs separately. And so you'd need four tameh people sitting on the bed in order for each one of the garments to become tameh. And then we say, no, that if each one itself counts as a support to the bed, each one of the cloths, so therefore it's carrying the entirety of what's on the bed. And we don't say you need four individual tameh people there, but rather you have one person on the bed, and each one of the legs counts as carrying the entirety of the person on there. Similarly, Rav Nachman Yitzchak said we have a brisa like this. This is in the prohibition of the av malacha of trapping on Shabbos. So a deer walks into a barn, a shed, whatever it is, and you're like, oh my goodness, we got ourselves some venison, but I can't shecht it on Shabbos, and we're not allowed to trap it on Shabbos. So if this one person just closes the door and traps the deer in there, chayiv. He has trapped the animal. Nalo shnayim, but if two people close the door, they're going to be exempt. But if one person couldn't do it alone, v'nalu shnayim, and then the two people together were able to do it, and they did so, chayavin. So then they're obligated again. So we see this concept of shnayim sha'asua. Two people that did the work together are going to be exempt because they didn't need each other. However, if they did need each other, then it counts as each one's act, and they're going to be chayiv. Wouldn't you say they can't be chayiv because there's only one deer in there. And each one didn't trap an entire animal. He only trapped half an animal. He only trapped half an animal. So there too, you would need two deer in there in order for both of them to be chayiv. And that's not the case. One deer trap by the two people doing the act counts as each one of them liable for the entirety of the deer. So to over here in the fig, each one is liable for the entirety of the fig, even though they carried it together. That the measure, that's the requisite amount, counts for both. Ravina says we have another supporting brisa. Amar Ravina Fanana Mitanina, we have another brisa supporting this. Hashutofin sheganvu, partners that stole together. So two people stole an animal. I know the Torah says that if you steal something and you're caught, you have to pay back 100% above as a penalty above what you stole. So you stole an animal worth $100. You have to pay back the animal plus another $100. If you then not only did you steal it, but you also shechted the animal, so you're gonna have to pay back daled v'hei, 4 or 5, depending on whether it's a small animal or a bovine, a large animal. So they stole it together and they shechted it. Chayavin. So they are obligated to pay. Why? Each one can say, look, I couldn't shecht. The entire thing is not mine. We did it together. So each one of us is obligated, and I only shechted half an animal. Obviously, there's no such thing as shechting half an animal. So I didn't do it, and you didn't do it. So unless they stole 2 animals and they shechted it together, where you have a full measure, a full animal for each. Obviously, we don't say that. So you see that even though that 2 stole and 2 did the actions, and they're 2 individually going to be held liable for it, they do the one animal that they did, the one measure, the one requisite amount that was done, that the transgression was about and done with, is going to be sufficient. Isn't it because, well, this concept we're just teaching, that one measure works for both, and it'll hold, both are liable for that. Ravashi says we also have another brisa that supports that. 2 people took out a rod of a gardi, and this is the I forget what it's called, that lifts up the weave. You have the vertical lines, and it's the rod above that lifts up the weave. And so they take it out together, and it's just a common thing that they would carry. So 2 people carry it out. They're both going to be chayiv. Which would require each one to carry his own requisite amount. And here they're carrying it together. So this is the first wide line on Tzadi Gimel Amid Beis. Wouldn't you say the reason is because whatever they're carrying counts for each one of them equally? Maybe there's enough wood there in that case that the wood can be used for kindling, which we saw that when carrying wood, that's broken, and is usually then going to be used as kindling. You need enough enough kindling to be able to cook a scrambled egg in a pot. So it doesn't really take that much, maybe this rod has enough for 2, and therefore there's a requisite amount for each one of them. Well, if that's the case, why do we specifically talk about this rod used in weaving? Why not just use a general a stick? Mashla the Gardi. So why did it mention in a weaver's stick, this weaving stick? But so you're right. So maybe it's not it's not because it's going to be used for kindling. You're right. We're using it in a weave, but the reason we're using it in a weave is because there's enough there to weave for both. Elamai lekalim mashmimina. So this brisa is not enough of a support. You're right. It's true that we've seen it multiple times, this concept that the measure works for both, but from this brisa, we can't prove it. Two people carry together a stick. This rod, in a weaver's rod, is going to be exempt, and Reb Shimon says you're obligated. So Gemara says, "Klape lie." How can you say that, Rabbi? It's the opposite. Reb Shimon is the one that says that even if they can each do it alone or they cannot each do it alone, they're going to be exempt because two people that did it together are exempt. It's the other way around. The Chachamim say you're obligated, each one is obligated, and Rabbi Shimon says you're exempt.